I'm Tamur. Shamil. India has cancelled the talks between Pakistan and India. India has called off the talks that were going to take place at the sidelines of UNGA. Prime Minister Imran Khan and Foreign Minister Shah had written a letter to the Indian government, to the Indian Prime Minister Modi. Both countries agreed that they would meet, the foreign ministers would meet on the sidelines of UNGA. But yesterday we saw that India called off the meeting, and now both foreign ministers of India and Pakistan would not be meeting. The language that was used by the Indian Ministry of External Affairs is also worth noticing. Very aggressive, arrogant as well. We'll talk about that. Also, we'll talk about the Indian approach towards Pakistan. Pakistan has been trying for peace and stability in the region. Pakistan has been forthcoming for peace and stability, for the talks between Pakistan and India. But why is India reluctant to have talks and meetings with the Pakistani officials? We'll talk about this, Pakistan-India relations. Also, we'll discuss today about Chief of Army Staff's visit to China, where he met the Chinese high officials and also the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. And both countries agreed that they would continue their collaboration. And Chief of Army Staff also ensured China that Pakistan will ensure the protection and security of China-Pakistan economic corridor. We'll start our program with Pakistan-India relations. The language that was used by the Ministry of External Affairs, the whole idea of peace and stability in the region. Prime Minister Imran Khan in his maiden speech made this point that Pakistan would move 2 steps forward if India takes 1 step. But we don't see that happening because India is not reciprocating at the moment. We'll start our discussion with our guests today. Let me introduce them. Our first guest is Ambassador Zameer Akran, renowned senior diplomat. So welcome to the show. Our second guest is Mr. Hassan Akbar. He's the director of Jinnah Institute based in Islamabad. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hassan Akbar. Our third guest is Brigadier retired Hassan Shah, renowned senior defense analyst and an expert on Pakistan-India relations as well. Welcome to the show, Brigadier Hassan Shah. Ambassador Akram, starting with yesterday's incident, I would call it. India called off the meeting between that was to take place on the sidelines of UNGA. We don't see India forthcoming, and India somehow is not reciprocating the peace, let's say, peace talks that Pakistan initiated. How do you see that?
Well, first of all, it is not surprising that India has not responded positively. What is surprising to me was that they had accepted this invitation in the first place and then they backed out of it in less than 24 hours for reasons which they have cited are reasons that had taken place before they had accepted the invitation for this meeting in New York. So what it seems to me is that this indicates some confusion within the Indian leadership, whether or not they want to have a dialogue with Pakistan. Frankly, I don't see a point in such a dialogue. Actually, the Indians have taken this attitude, as you mentioned, use the word arrogant. I would use the same word. Their behavior is totally arrogant and dismissive. And unfortunately, the more we try and indicate our desire to talk to them, the more arrogant and dismissive they become. Yep. Personally, I think that Pakistan should not take this course. Yes, we are for dialogue, but on equal terms. At the same time, I think if the Indians have some reasons for not having a dialogue with us, we have even more reasons for not engaging with them. And that reason, in my mind, is the repression, the brutal repression that they are continuing to implement in occupied Kashmir against the Kashmiri people. And as long as this repression continues against the Kashmiri people, we have nothing to talk about. At least that is my point of view. Right. And we should say that as a first step, if you want to have a dialogue with Pakistan, you need to stop this repression and this brutality that is being meted out to the Kashmiri people.
Right. Mr. Akbar, do you expect anything positive, anything sane from a government in India, BJP for that matter, backed by RSS, people like Sushma Swaraj, because many people inside India even, they criticize her for her approach towards neighbors, towards Pakistan, especially towards peace for that matter. And also, while there are people like Amit Shah and BJP, people like Aditya Nath Yogi for that matter over there, this whole mood that we see inside India and the BJP mood towards Pakistan? How do you see that?
Well, I think it's having an impact on India-Pakistan relations. The language of the statement from the Ministry of External Affairs betrays the kind of hostility that we now see in Delhi and the government in Delhi. This is something new. The statement was very unprofessional. The language that it used was unprofessional and unbecoming a professional foreign service. So clearly it was a political statement in many ways, and I think it reflects the mentality of the BJP. And the BJP has also pulled out of, let's not forget, the agreement with the PDP in Jammu and Kashmir and have imposed governor rule in Kashmir and continue to do atrocities in occupied Kashmir. So clearly we see a segue that goes into elections 2019. We know that Modi is probably going to take a more harsh line stance on Pakistan. We've heard reports that they're going to do a celebration of the so-called surgical strikes in the days to come. And these all speak to a more hostile Delhi. And I think we will see that policy continuing at least till elections in India. After that, whether we see a more confident government in Delhi that is ready to engage with Pakistan, we'll have to see. But one thing is sure, that India has pursued a policy of escalation along the line of control, of hostility with Pakistan. It is not going to reap any dividends for the region or for India for that matter. And there are very senior analysts and thinkers within India who are questioning their government's position in Pakistan policy. And this will eventually force the Modi government or any government in India to reconsider its current position on Pakistan. We should not be too eager to, as Ambassador Zameer Akram Sahab has said, we should not be too eager to offer dialogue and discussion with India. And now I think the ball is in India's court.
But as we were talking earlier, India agreed that there would be meeting between the foreign ministers. But why did they backtrack? What was the reason? Why did they do it? And that too just within 24 hours. They agreed first, but then what was the change?
I think as Ambassador Saab sort of hinted towards what might have changed, I think there is discussion within the government in India. There is confusion within Delhi about what policy to adopt with Pakistan. And I think the Ministry of External Affairs led by, in my hunch is that Sushma Swaraj must have played a role in backtracking on this decision to meet with Pakistan's foreign minister.
I would further elaborate on this point, that there are two reasons, and it is a calculated rejection by the Indian government. And the reasons are two. One is that there is a paradigm shift in the policies and the people thinking and the politicians thinking both inside Pakistan and India. Now you see, the general elections were held here in Pakistan, but they were not Indian centric. Whereas in India the elections are coming and mostly it is Pakistan centric. This is number one. They are going for elections in the next year, and there they will create this bogey that those who are adamantly against Pakistan and those who can punch well Pakistan, they are going to win the next election. This is number one. Number two, that there is going to be a conference in the General Assembly very soon. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan's foreign minister, has already left for that. Now, there are going to, both the countries are going to present their cases. Pakistan's case will be a point which will be there, it will be on Kashmir. And this will, we will project to the world that there are genocides, there are atrocities unleashed by the Indian government which are going there. And what India will reflect, they will say that these disturbances inside Kashmir are from across the border. So that is, and that's why we are not going to negotiate unless there is a normalization in the situation. So they have done it to show the world that we are not going for negotiation because of this. Right. So it is a well calculated rejection by India. It is not that what they have said, there are postal, tickets, postal tickets, right, or there is a soldier which has been killed and mutilated on the line of control, or there are 3 police officials killed in South Kashmir. This is not the case. It is a case which is for the people who do not know the reality, the real face of India, are aimed on these two reasons.
Right. Ambassador Akram, do you think, many people say this, and I'm going to put this question to you, that Pakistan's approach towards India is somewhat docile? What was the need to interact with India, let's say, or to engage India within 1 month, let's say, or month and a half, since we have a new government in Pakistan? They could have taken 6 months, perhaps 7 months, and then they can go for the talks. What was the hurry in improving, let's say, relations with India?
No, I mean, there's no harm in improving relations with your neighbors. And the new Prime Minister said as much.
But keeping BJP in mind, but keeping Modi and the Modi government in
I
mind.
think it is good for Pakistan or any Pakistani leader to give his position with absolute clarity, that we are ready to improve relations with you, and we are, as he said, willing to go halfway or more than halfway in order to do that. So I think he has shown that his credentials are absolutely above board and honorable in terms of improving relations, and he has also said that his focus is on the domestic agenda, on improving the economy, etc. So he would like to have peace with all his neighbors, and that's his approach towards Afghanistan as well, and China and others that we are engaging with. So I think in that sense I don't fault the government for showing over eagerness, but I think that we also need to be realistic. I mean, everyone here in Pakistan needs to be very realistic about what are the prospects. And as you've listened to my other two friends sitting at the table, they have outlined some of the reasons that, in addition to what I had said. Now, here is the problem. Kashmir is a problem which is a bleeding wound for India, and it is up to them. So they are not doing us any favors when we offer a dialogue with India to address Kashmir and other issues. So then they are not doing us any favor by agreeing to dialogue, to engage with us. The problem is, I think, the leadership in India. I guess part of it is the upcoming elections, when they want to use Pakistan as the bogeyman to get votes, especially from the Hindu extremist types. It's also a disagreement and a difference of approach within the Indian administration, between the Foreign Office or the Ministry of External Affairs and perhaps the National Security Advisor, because they accept this meeting in New York, and then within 24 hours or less than 24 they backed out. It just shows confusion to me. And that's probably because of the internal differences that exist within the leadership.
Right. Mr. Akbar, whenever you go for the talks, you need a conducive environment, certainly, and especially when Pakistan is going for talks with India. Did we have that conducive environment with the Indian authorities, with the Indian government? And if we didn't, what were the options for Pakistan, and what now are the options for Pakistan in future?
Well, I think I'd like to emphasize this point that for Pakistan, it is important that we show not only to the region, but to the world that we are ready to engage with our neighbors, whether it be Afghanistan or India, and that we want to restart the dialogue process. I think it's very important that Pakistan continue to emphasize this point. The rejection is on the part of the Indians, so the ball is in India's court now. About the conducive environment, I think with what's going on within Kashmir, obviously it's not an environment that is conducive as such to peace, but it is an environment that is conducive to dialogue. Because when you have such pressures emanating within an area, when India is also in pressure from within Kashmir, they are facing a boycott of the local government elections that are about to happen in that state. Clearly, there is pressure on the Indian government as well. So in that sense, I think the timing, I wouldn't necessarily fault the government on the timing here, because if you delayed it by 6 or 7 months, you would have been in electioneering early 2019, and then it would have been quite impossible to go forward with India. The other prospect, of course, was to wait till after 2019. But I think it's good that we showed to the world that we are willing to engage, that we are open, that we have no issues with talks, and that the problem clearly lies in Delhi. And now the ball is in their court. And as long as they do not show any willingness to engage with Pakistan, I think we should keep insisting that we are open to dialogue.
Right. Brigadier Shah, talking about Pakistan and India peace, Prime Minister Imran Khan invited his friend, his colleague from India, Navjot Sidhu, the famous cricketer. He came to Pakistan. He attended the ceremony here in Islamabad. Navjot Sidhu, the cricketer, he also met Chief of Army Staff. And later he said that probably the Sikh pilgrims would be visiting the Kartarpura
Border will be
temple here in Pakistan. That was criticized by the Indian media and especially by the BJP government. Pakistan has taken initiatives. Pakistan asked Navjot Sidhu to visit Pakistan. They also said that they would. Pakistan also said that Pakistan would open the border from the Kartarpura side. But we don't see India coming for peace talks with Pakistan. So would you buy Mr. Akbar's stance that Pakistan is perhaps gaining by taking these initiatives and it is India that is losing?
I think both the colleagues have put it rightly. Pakistan should ask Indian government and show to the world that we are a peace-loving country. What India will get from it? India will remain isolated. Now you see Pakistan is engaging the regional countries also. Pakistan is talking to Russia, and you never could think that one day will come when Russia and Pakistan will be so closer after 1971 and 65 debacles. Now you see Pakistan is now the strategic partner of China, and in this strategic corridor Saudi Arabia has also been pulled now. Now Iran will also come in this corridor. Likely chances are there that the whole region, and if this is extended to Afghanistan, what India will do in this region? Pakistan has obviously, they are trying and they have shown to the world that Pakistan is ready for talks, and warmongering will do nothing. We will achieve nothing from this hysteria that Pakistan and India should fight against each other. We are of the world 16.5% of the population, and in the world trade, our what we are contributing, it is only 2% of trade of the whole world. Right. So when we are fighting against each other, the whole world will come into this complex and we will achieve nothing. So Pakistan has done the correct thing. The new government has come. They have shown to the world that we want to go with peace and not war.
Right. Mr. Akram, this language that was used by the Ministry of External Affairs, Indian Ministry of External Affairs, how do you see this? This is not the diplomatic, according to any diplomatic standards, I would say, naming the Prime Minister of a country, also using the words like evil and all that. How do you see this?
You know, I've been a diplomat for 36 years in my career. I've never seen this kind of language, even from Indians. Okay, and I've dealt with them as well, both in Delhi and from Islamabad. This is a new law that we are witnessing, and it also demonstrates the kind of behavior that you can expect from these kind of people that are in power now in India. Again, I have not seen this kind of behavior or this kind of language that Indians have used, even in private conversations, even in off-the-record discussions. We have not seen this. We have been part of a Track 2 dialogue as well, and we have not seen this language over there as well. So I think this is really a reflection of the people themselves who are using this language. It shows the low level to which they have sunk, that they can resort to such kind of rhetoric against Pakistan and Pakistan's leadership.
So should we expect anything positive now from the BJP side, because the elections are around the corner? How do you see this?
I have said, I mean, for some years now. I mean,
Right.
I retired since 2015, but even when I've been writing in the media or appearing in these kind of settings, I've always said that we should not expect any positive change in the Indian government's attitude led by this BJP
right.
Modi government. A lot of people had hoped that, you know, when the BJP comes, they felt that it would be the same as BJP under Mr. Vajpayee.
Right.
But Mr. Vajpayee was a different man altogether.
We had George Fernandez at that time. We had
So-
Jaswant Singh for that. We don't have them anymore.
But it was Mr. Vajpayee who was
Yes,
leading this
that's
thing,
right,
and he
yeah.
was a different man. He was committed to improving relations with Pakistan. He did not believe in even though he was from the BJP, he did not believe in this kind of Hindutva, the way that Mr. Modi is going around dealing with Muslims and other minorities in his own country, let alone dealing with the country with which they are hostile. And Pakistan is a prime example of that hostility. So we should have no expectations from this chap. We did the right thing. We made the offer. They've rejected the offer. End of story. Until they now come back to us and say, okay, we are ready to talk to you.
Right. So we have played our part, Mr. Akbar. Do you think that we have played our part, and in future now we should expect India to take the initiative? But what are going to be the repercussions of the statement that they have made, and they have made a record of the statement? Very loud and clear.
Yeah, I think that the repercussion is that Pakistan is unlikely in the near future to make such a serious and committed offer again, at least till the end of 2019. I think what Ambassador Zameer Akram was talking about, track 2 dialogues, and Jinnah Institute runs one, the Chow Prior dialogue. We've never seen such level of hostility emanating from the Indian delegates that we have seen in this statement. And it clearly reflects a more hostile posturing in the lead up to the elections that is only going to worsen bilateral relations. I think India is also, there are two key elements here in terms of Indian thinking. I think the first is that India believes that it can become a global power without engaging with Pakistan. And therein lies a fundamental problem in the mindset in Delhi. I think if and when India realizes that engaging with Pakistan and the region positively is the first step to India gaining any kind of global eminence, India will then be forced to engage with Pakistan. The second issue, I think, which Brigadier Saab referred to quite rightly, is that India has this BJP government has made two fundamental shifts in its policy on Kashmir. The first is that India now wants to insist and take a position, they want to change the de facto status of Kashmir through changing Article 35. You see, in Jammu, Srinagar, there's been the largest shutdown on Article 35. This is a big issue in terms of the status of the Jammu and Kashmir region as a disputed territory. If you look at the statements coming from the Ministry of External Affairs in India, they have consistently taken the position that Kashmir is not up for discussion because it is not a disputed issue. So they're trying to change the goalpost on that. The second thing I think that they've tried to do with the recent issue in Kashmir is that they want to make the Kashmir insurgency is an internal issue. There are people whose rights have been denied and who have problems with the central government in India and who want their right of self-determination. It is an intrinsic internal struggle for their right of self-determination. India consistently wants to show to the world that this is linked somehow to cross-border terrorism, etc. And using statements like the one that they did shows desperation, I think, because the world is now waking up to the fact that the rights of Kashmiris are being trampled upon.
And UN report on that. For that
Yes,
matter.
the UN has done a report, the Guardian, the New York Times, everybody's written about it. Indians themselves are writing about it. And the inability of this government to clamp down on what is happening inside Kashmir, I think is driving their desperation to make it sound as if this is somehow all sponsored by Pakistan, which I think is completely not part of the reality.
And
so I think these are fundamental structural issues that we will have to address if there is any forward movement in
And
the
just
future.
to add to what you are saying, India does not even consider the Kashmiris as a party to this whole issue of Kashmir. And it is for the Kashmiris to decide whatever they want for Kashmiris. Brigadier Shah, talking about Pakistan-India relations and the rift that is there now. India would be celebrating the 2nd anniversary of surgical strikes. And they came up with this drama of surgical strikes in 2016. I would say only if wishes were horses. I remember DG ISPR at that time, General Hassan Badwa, he took the international media and the local media to Kashmir and he asked them that they can show or the Indians can provide any proof of the surgical strikes that they carried out in Kashmir. Second celebration right after this mess that India has created in the region. How do you see that? This populism, this instigating that anti-Pakistan sentiment inside India, how do you see it?
If you remember, there was an Indian chief, and I will quote his statement he was making, that we are preparing ourselves against China. Pakistan is a minor irritant. This is what he stated. Now, when they are saying to their own population that Pakistan is a minor irritant, and they are believing it, and then they cannot handle the country like Pakistan, so then they are on defensive. And then they are making these type of dramas that we have carried out a surgical strike like this and that. You must understand the nature of surgical strike. It is with the airplanes, it is with the artillery bombardment, it is with missiles, it is with a very quick attack going inside, insertion, and then getting back,
right, yeah.
or paratroopers. So what sort of attack it was, surgical strike it was? The world didn't know. We do not know what has happened there. And if you remember, the then Army Chief General Rahil said that if they don't know what is a surgical strike, if they do it like, if they want to know it, Pakistan, when the time comes, will show them what a surgical strike is. And then they will tell this story to their generation in their syllabus, in their textbooks. So it is just a drama. It is just showing to their own population that India is a big country, because what they are aiming at, Barrister Zameer, Akram and my other colleague will bring it out more clearly, that they are aspiring to be the member of the bigger club. So they want to present it to the world that India is such a large country that Pakistan means nothing to them. So it is just a drama. They have not done it. They cannot even think of doing that.
Mr. Akram, what Brigadier Shah talked about, the bigger club, the changing regional alliances, because many people are concerned about it in Pakistan and in the region. Pakistan, China, and other countries in the region working on China-Pakistan economic corridor. We also saw the pact between United States and India, the defense pact as well, and the security pact and intelligence pact. These alliances and its impact on Pakistan and Pakistan-India relations, how do you see it?
Well, let me say first of all, from the Indian ambition of being a great power or a global power, you can't be a great power or a global power when 70% of your people are below the poverty line. So, you know, if you're an empty stomach, you can't be a superpower. So that is a reality which they need to recognize. Second thing is, yes, the international strategic situation or the dynamics have taken such a turn that now there is increasing confrontation between the United States and China, largely as a result of America's own efforts. I think the Chinese from the beginning have said that they would like to ensure a peaceful rise for their country, working with the United States, working with the other major powers, and ensuring that the interests of all are taken on board. But it is the United States, and not just the Trump administration, but even before this administration, the pivot to Asia, etc., was meant to basically contain and confront China, in which strategy India has come to play a major role for the Americans as part of what is now called the quadrilateral alliance that exists, that involves the US, India, Australia, and Japan. And if you see the alliance, it's meant to contain the Chinese in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, which the Americans now call the Indo-Pacific,
yeah.
and more specifically in the South China Sea. So it is in response to that actually that this Belt and Road Initiative by President Xi becomes a very strategically important requirement for the Chinese, and obviously because of CPEC and our strategic partnership with the Chinese over the years, it is also a manifestation of the importance that Pakistan has. as I think, as a pivotal state in this geopolitical scenario. So I think the relationship between China and Pakistan is bound to grow. In that kind of environment, I don't think that eventually a policy of hostility and confrontation will succeed. Because look at it this way, I mean, just consider China, even though its economy has slowed down, it is still growing 6 to 7% a year. The American economy is growing about 2%. The Western alliance itself is at loggerheads. The US and EU have problems. The US and NATO have problems. So I don't think that the relationship between the US and China is going to work in the long run in the way that they are pushing it. Eventually the Americans will have to recognize that they have to work with the Chinese. And to top it all off in this strategic game, the Chinese and the Russians are becoming even more closer.
Right.
So recently when you saw that the Americans said we will impose sanctions on China for buying Russian S-400 missiles, the Chinese basically shrugged their shoulders and said you can do whatever you want.
No.
You know, so these sanctions don't mean a thing to the Chinese or to the Russians.
And right. So, Mr. Akbar, if let's say United States and China are going to improve their relations, what would be the option for India? Because Pakistan, we saw General Bajwa visiting China, meeting the top officials in China, meeting the Premier Xi Jinping in China, strengthening Pakistan-China relations, talking about China-Pakistan economic corridor. But India, we see confused there as well. India is part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, member of SCO, but at the same time, they aren't that willing to go for all out for Shanghai Cooperation Organization. How do you see that?
I think the US will find India a fickle friend. The Indians have a history of non-alignment. Only recently, with the preeminence of America as a unipolar power, has India and America's closeness grown. And with the rise of China, America saw India as an important partner in the Indo-Pacific, and I think Ambassador Saab referenced the situation quite well. But I would like to highlight a couple of points which reflect India's thinking as well in terms of how it views America as an anchor for it to become a global power. I think India will continue to have a strategic relationship with the United States, but it will also engage with Russia and China. And I think what is interesting is that there have been two informal summits between Modi and Xi Jinping and Modi and Putin. These are very interesting. They come at a time when America is under pressure globally because of Trump's policies. And many view America's influence as waning in many parts of the world. Globally, when you have structural realignments and you have new powers emerge that challenge an established power, there is some turmoil. But whether that turmoil will necessarily lead to conflict or can self-negotiate and self-correct into new power structures, I think is something that we have to view. I think India is very cognizant of this. India's engagement with China and Russia will continue. India does not want to cut its relationship with both those powers. And as America's engagement with India increases, America will, ask India the question, are you with us or against us?
Ultimately.
Ultimately. And I think India will choose the middle path, as India historically has always chosen.
But I mean, can I add a little bit here? That I think that Indians, I agree what the Indian approach will be, but they will keep using the so-called China threat to maximize their gains from the United States. Okay? As you have seen recently when Mr. Pompeo visited and these agreements that they signed. So they will continue to use the China card, if I may use that word, that term, to maximize their gains from. So at the end of the day, I think the real loser in all this is going to be the United States.
United States, that's interesting because Shah, the ultimate loser might be United States, but the strengthening of Pakistan-China relations, Chief of Army Staff visited China, and you heard what other panelists have been saying. Now the options for Pakistan, because ultimately Pakistan has to improve its economy, certainly, and that is possible when we work with the Chinese. We work on China-Pakistan economic corridor, internal economy as well. strengthening Pakistan-China relations and military-to-military relations? How do you see that?
I think Pakistan has been very successfully engaging itself with bilateralism and multilateralism. Pakistan has emerged regionally. I think successfully it has engaged the regional powers also. You see, Pakistan was solely reliant not much before on America for arms and ammunition. And Pakistan is not dependent on them. Pakistan is producing itself many things. And Pakistan has gone to Russia. Pakistan previously used to send their officers for training to America. Now Pakistan has signed a pact with Russia. Pakistan is holding joint exercises with Russia. Pakistan is holding joint exercises with even Saudi Arab. Pakistan is having joint military-to-military relation and exercises with China. And now you see with the result, the joint statement with the Chinese president has also issued that we are attaching much significance to Pakistan as a strategic partner. And yes.
Right. And just to add that Chief of Army Staff has been visiting Iran as well.
Yes.
And Foreign Minister made his maiden trip to Kabul.
Yes. So this is how you see that Pakistan has successfully been engaging the regional countries and the regional power. And very successfully Pakistan has brought Saudi Arab also in the CPEC project. Now where India will stand now, I am worried and I am afraid that India will feel one day themselves as an isolated country in this region. The day the CPEC project gets going, India will see itself that they remains alienated, isolated, and then they will ask Pakistan that let's join together. That Pakistan should remember then that what India is doing today. Pakistan project with Iran, that is Chabahar, it is not also going very well.
Indian
project Chabahar, it is not going very well because there are problems between India, America and Iran, and Chabahar is one of the victims of that. Now this Pakistan being the gateway in this region has its own importance, and Pakistan must exploit that.
Right. Though India might take the pressure, and they said that they would continue their cooperation with Iran even if there are sanctions and more pressure on Iran for that matter. But still that would continue.
That remains to be seen,
right.
because the Americans have said that they will make no exemptions, but it remains to be seen whether they will put sanctions on India or not.
Gentlemen,
I think one last point that I'd like to make is that we need to come out of the zero-sum calculation. You see, America is still an important player in the region, globally and in the region, and our engagement with the US should continue. And I think our focus in the next year and a half should be Afghanistan. I think that's where we need to put all our energies and focus. And if we can find some suitable outcome there, I think that would be a major development
in Afghanistan. But Mr. Akram, do you see that any positive change in Kabul? Because so far we see many experts of the view more hawks in Kabul administration towards Pakistan. You know them, we all know them, but do you see the relations improving in the near future?
Well, it all depends on what the Americans want. If they want a negotiated settlement in Afghanistan, the way they are saying, in the way that Mr. Pompeo and others have been conveying to us, that they would like Pakistan to help them engage with the Taliban, then if they are genuine, and this is the approach of the entire US government, but because there as well there are people inside the administration, the CIA, the Pentagon, the State Department and the President's office, they are pulling in different directions. So if everyone is genuine about a dialogue, then yes, things can improve, because if this is what Pakistan's position has been all along, that there is no military solution in Afghanistan, you have to engage with the Taliban, you have to find a political settlement based on power sharing, which they seemingly have agreed to, because they met with them in Qatar, etc., and they are likely to get, and they would like us to bring the Taliban to the table. So there is a possibility, but it all depends on how genuine the US is about having a negotiated solution in Afghanistan.
Right.
Well, let me add the last point on this. That there are signs of war weariness on both sides, inside America also. That's why they are asking now that we must settle this issue peacefully and through dialogue. And the Taliban are also coming to the negotiating table. So there are all the chances and hope that this issue is going to be solved very nearly by a through dialogue.
Afghanistan certainly is a very interesting topic, and for that we need to have a separate dialogue on this. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Ambassador Akram, pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Mr. Hassan Akbar, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Brigadier Shah, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Pakistan has stood for peace and stability, and Pakistan has once again made an initiative for peace talks with India, but India called it off, and the ball is now in the Indian court. As Mr. Hassan Akbar said, we hope things improve and we hope that peace prevails in the region. Thank you for watching today's program. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz. And the family of Prophet Muhammad